guys, it's Gamer Ahmer here. So today I wanted to go ahead and talk about something that has always been a tradition for me and my family around Thanksgiving. So today we're going to go ahead and recap the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and all of the amazing memories that I had back in the 90s, especially watching all of those amazing floats. So let's go ahead and talk about the 90s and the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So I could not think of a better time with the holidays quickly approaching, and everyone pretty much remembers their childhood memories, or even back then in the 90s, watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which has been around for a very long time. So this is pretty much a parade that's put on every year on Thanksgiving, and this is such a big historical event. So pretty much back in the early 20s, they had this Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and it was not like it is today. They didn't have these big, massive, gigantic floats full of characters. They had animals, they had people gathering. It was like this whole big celebration for Thanksgiving. But it has adapted and changed over the years, and especially the 90s were such a fantastic time, and I remember seeing some of my all-time favorite characters on those big, gigantic floats that are those balloons kind of like up in the air, and you have like 70 to 90 people trying to rein in the strings. Just hold on to those characters, as it can get very windy in New York. So we'll go ahead and recap some of the years and some of my favorite floats that I remember, some of the balloons and the characters that I remember as well. So of course we'll go ahead and start out in 1990. That was a fantastic time. We actually had a couple new balloons that were introduced. We had the Clifford the Big Red Dog, and we even had Bart Simpson. So that was really awesome to see those floats, and what they kind of do with those balloons is over the years they'll keep them for so many years, and of course if they get damaged and things like that, they'll go ahead and fix them, replace them, and just kind of keep them going. But it's such a cool tradition to see all of these different characters, which ones they add over the years, how many times they show these different balloons and these different floats. But seeing Bart Simpson on the skateboard is definitely a really cool thing, as they continue to kind of showcase him throughout the years to advance. And that was definitely a great win for all of the Simpsons lovers to try and see some of your favorite TV shows, your favorite cartoons, even video games and everything else that they later adapted into this Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Then of course, as we go into 1991, you may remember Kermit the Frog being, punctured and having some damage back then. But if you were young enough like me, you might not even remember that. There are some later ones in the years that you may actually remember. Then I don't really remember 1992, but 1993 was such a fantastic year. They decided to add Sonic the Hedgehog, and that was their very first video game character that was introduced into the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And that was like so amazing to see Sonic the Hedgehog and the years later in advance. But that was definitely a great win for all of the video game fans, all of the Sega fans from back in the day, to see a huge Sonic the Hedgehog big balloon. Now they did actually have some trouble with that, so that's definitely a saddened little thing there, where he was kind of punctured, and that was definitely pretty sad, but it was awesome seeing Sonic the Hedgehog over the years and after that. Then of course, 1994, you do have Barney being introduced as that big gigantic float. I also remember still seeing, Spider-Man, still seeing, all of the other ones, just like Sonic the Hedgehog, just kind of advancing through the 90s. And then we even had 1995, they introduced Dudley the Dragon, still continuing to use a lot of these. 96, we did add Rocky and Bullwinkle, so that was pretty cool. I do remember those cartoons and some of the video games on the Super Nintendo, kind of like back in that time frame. So back in 1997, they had such a traumatic kind of time, but before we go ahead and jump into that, that's when they actually added the Rugrats for Nickelodeon. That was so cool, seeing that big, gigantic Rugrats float. Definitely a cartoon that I really enjoyed. I love seeing that on my TV, along with all of the previous years, adding all of those amazing floats, those amazing gigantic balloons, and then they even added Arthur. So I love those books, and I loved watching the TV series that they did for Arthur. But that was definitely a traumatic time that I don't really think I understood back then, the big situation that unfolded. All I remember is one of the balloons getting dismantled. Well, essentially what happened was the Cat in the Hat kind of hit this big lamppost and it actually fell on someone's head. So that was a very serious event that took place for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And to go ahead and prevent some of these other balloons from getting in that wind gust and damaging some other things and then hurting people, they decided to try and go after the Pink Panther balloon and even Barney. So I do remember Barney kind of getting destroyed back in the day. I just assumed that it was from the wind and everything else, as it's hard to kind of tell everything that was going on when you're just watching on TV and you're not really there at the Thanksgiving Day Parade. So that was definitely a big traumatic event that a lot of people remember when they think back to the 90s, they think back to some of these big balloons. So back in 1998, they decided to go ahead and introduce another character, and that was for all of the Cartoon Network lovers. So if you were kind of battling against Nickelodeon with the Rugrats, now you had something for the Cartoon Network fans. And you had Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. So that was definitely so cool to see that one back in 1998. And then in 1999, Nickelodeon kind of triumphed and just came through by adding Blue for Blue's Clues. So that was definitely something cool to see. And then in 2000, they decided to add a couple more. So they added the Dragon's Tales, they added Cassie for that. And do you guys remember Ask Jeeves? So that whole entire thing, they actually added a Jeeves. So this is kind of showing how outdated this actually is. And then they updated their Ronald McDonald character. And then they even included a band leader Mickey Mouse character. Now, some of these, they actually added some other ones and some other floats, but these are just kind of the ones that stood out to me. And then in 2001, Pokemon took over. So they actually had the first time for Pikachu. So that was definitely so cool seeing another video game character. Something that just definitely took over back in the day. The card games, the toys, the clothing, the school accessories, just literally anything and everything. Video games. Just so much cool stuff. They added Pikachu and Jimmy Neutron. They took over with that. So kind of leading up from the early 90s to about 10 years to the early 2000s, that was definitely the times that I remember the most of those amazing big gigantic balloons. Seeing Bart Simpson all the way through video game characters like Sonic the Hedgehog, even Pikachu, just having a mix between Cartoon Network of Dexter and having Nickelodeon where you had Blue's Clues and the Rugrats. Just what a time to be alive and kind of see all of this cool and creative stuff that just really shaped all of this. And then seeing all of that traumatic stuff happen where Sonic gets punctured his first year, and then even Barney getting completely destroyed. So who remembers watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade back in the early 90s all the way up to the early 2000s? Do you guys remember all of the different characters that they added, some of the amazing floats, some of the amazing balloon characters that they had? Do you guys remember some of those traumatic events that happened where some of the people actually got injured and even all of the, balloons that got destroyed over that time? Do you remember watching that and just thinking that it would be so awesome to be there? Did you guys actually go as well? So, of course, let me know what you guys think, and thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go ahead and check out my other videos, and stay tuned for more.